There they all are.
Hello, dolphins.
They look great.
They all do look pretty good.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Cal, and welcome everyone, and welcome Teri. Teri Bolton is down in on Roatan at the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences. She is the assistant director of the facility and the director of research and training. Did I get that right, Teri, for the full?
Yeah, sounds like a lot of hats. Sounds like a whole lot of hats. Yeah,
it does.
But that's basically it. Basically it. Yes.
And how, if you don't mind me asking, just to set the stage, how long have you been working in training, but then also how long have you been in Roatan with the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences?
Well, I started off as an intern at the Baltimore Aquarium. Now I'm going to age myself here, in like 1984. And I was hired as an assistant dolphin trainer in 1985. So I worked in the States for a few years, but my husband and I moved down here in 1991. So I've been in July, as a matter of fact. So this July will be 29 years at the Roatan Institute for Marine Sciences. Yes.
Awesome.
Long time. Very
cool. So you were there with the dolphins when they first came to Roatan, to AKR, to Anthony's Key Resort.
Correct. I was here from, not at the very beginning. The first animals came in 1989, late 1989. And Eldon, my husband, who is the director of the Institute, was back and forth with some trainers from our facility in the States. But we moved here permanently in 91. So yeah,
nice.
Basically from the beginning, off and on, but permanently in 91.
So I think it's safe to say that the dolphins are a big part of your family.
Yes. I have 3 terrestrial children, and at the moment right now, I have 17 aquatic babies.
Very cool. So can you tell us a little bit about the dolphins you have there right now?
Sure. We have 11 females and 7 males here. They're bottlenose dolphin, coastal bottlenose dolphins. We have 3 that were originally brought in from the wild, Gracie, Richie, and Alita. The rest were born here. We have multiple generations of animals. I'll use Gracie's family as an example. Gracie is one of our original collected animals from the wild, and she has 2 daughters, a grandson, and a granddaughter. So we have multi-generational family lines here. I'm going to sweep around the facility so you guys can see where the dolphins live.
Okay.
Keep everyone together as much as we can. During the day, we do have some separation for training purposes and just because personnel and timing and programs. But for the most part, this is where everyone lives. I'm going to show you the facility.
That's a great shot.
You can see it all good?
Yeah, it looks great. Very windy today.
It is very windy, thank goodness, because it's hot and we had a little bit of rain this morning. And so usually when it rains and then the sun comes out, we're pretty much roasting. But today at least we have a nice breeze. But the facility goes from the beach that you just saw in the last pass all the way to the outside of the enclosure to the fence line, which is about 20 feet deep over there, and it's a little bit over an acre.
Wow.
And then we have some holding pens in the back area that, like I said, we separate during the day for different training purposes, for one-on-one training with an animal, also leading to our open water program. You can look on our website, roatanims.org, and you'll see a write-up about our open water. We're fortunate enough to have government permission to take our animals out. We've been taking animals out into the open ocean since 1992, and we continue to do so. And if there's one thing that this close down has done for us, it's actually slowed things down tourist-wise and boat traffic-wise. We've actually got several more animals going open water. Kathleen, I don't know if I told you, but Gracie and Maury go open water now.
That's awesome.
Callie and Polly go open water, and so do Bailey and Tank.
Oh, so wow.
We've got 6 more animals besides Richie, Ronnie, French, Champ, and Link, who go out on a regular basis. We now have 5 girls and a calf going out as well.
Wow. So
Yeah, it's
for
exciting.
folks that might not be aware of that, the going out means you have the enclosure area that you just showed us, and going out means that they swim outside and go out onto the reef with you guys, right?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. We have a series of gates from, like I said, the training holding pens that go out into the open ocean. We bring the animals out first into the backup area, the back reef here, and teach them. I'm going to just pan down to the baby.
Woohoo!
There she is.
That's Sandy. Is she
Yeah.
with Tilly and somebody else?
She's with Tilly and Polly right now.
Awesome. Very
Polly takes
cool.
a lot of babysitting turns. Yeah. But yeah, getting back to open water, a series of gates that we bring the animals through until they're in the outside area, but it's still back reef. And then we train them to boat follow. And
Okay.
so it's a really good, it's a good measure for hurricane preparedness,
Mm-hmm.
that they go out and know how to follow the boat back home if they were ever to get lost. Also, we use the boat engine as what we call a recall. So they know that when they hear that boat engine, that they can come to it, and they're rewarded handsomely for doing that. So it's a good measure for hurricane preparedness, like I said, but it's also really enriching, and it's really fun to do with the animals. It's always a little bit nervous when you first take them out there, because you're like, are they going to want to come back? But to be honest with you, it's usually pretty hard. It's harder to get them to go out than it is to get them to come back in.
I remember a few years ago, you were telling me how you were teaching then French and a couple of the other males to go out. And I got to watch you a little bit. And you said when you first start teaching, you can't shut the gate because they'll sneak back in because they don't want to be out there alone, which I
Right.
thought was really interesting because this is their home where you are there. And so it's kind of like, when I take my beagles out for their first walk when we get home, it's a little scary out there. And so they have
Right.
you as their safety.
Right. And that's the thing. It's really not about the food reinforcers. It's about their lives here.
Yeah.
They have a pod, they have a social structure. And I think that there's a lot of comfort and security in that. And the ocean is a big, wide, scary space. So especially if you weren't born in it, if you were born into this facility and you're not used to that much space, it's something that needs to be, you need to be acclimated to. So
Right.
that's what we do when we're taking the animals out. We make sure that we never take them too far, before they're ready. And they'll tell you, they show you, on their face, their facial expressions, their body language. They'll tell you how comfortable they are looking around and using their echolocation to, shoot all the way down the reef and, explore a little bit. Like I said, it's really, really fun when they gain confidence doing it. But initially, it's a little nerve-wracking for the animals as well as the trainers. But it's a
Yeah.
lot of fun, and I'm really glad that we're getting to do it with more and more animals. It really gives me a sense of security. Like I said, we train them initially individually. The only ones we trained together were Tank and Bailey, because they're mother and calf, and so
Okay.
they feed off of each other. And so if one's nervous or the other one is nervous, that relates to the other one's behavior. So we normally try to train them individually so they have a lot of confidence in themselves going out, not relying on anybody else to tell them, where to go and what to do, that they know their way home from wherever, we take them. So it's a long process, and they really enjoy it, and so do we. So I'm really glad, like I said, if anything good comes out of this shutdown, it's that we've been able to do more open.
That's awesome. We actually have a question that came in based on a comment you just made a bit ago. We are now entering hurricane season, even
Correct.
though it seems a little quiet right now. What do you do? Well, not yet. I mean, it's I was trying to qualify that. But what? How would you prepare the dolphins? Would you leave them in the area there? I mean, how would you prepare for a hurricane?
Well, fortunately, we are below the hurricane belt. So
Okay.
normally it's not, a real, and I have to knock on wood, but we've been fortunate. We haven't been hit directly since 1998 with Hurricane Mitch. And we have done a couple of different things. We do sometimes take the animals that we can take out. We'll take them out and put them in swimming pools inland. And there have been times where I remember Hurricane Wilma that wasn't coming anywhere near us, so we didn't move anyone. But she was so large, I believe she went into Cancun or Cozumel,
I think so.
but we got a storm surge of 3 feet, so it went
Wow.
over our docks. The water went over some of our docks. But the surprising thing was, and we had two 2-week-old calves at the time. And Kathleen, I think you have a aerial shot of the facility that you can put up later if you want.
Yeah.
But what they did was, the dock that goes from our Palapa area out to the training pens, right? That faces the lagoon.
Yep.
All of the animals lined up in front of the training pens. I think at the time we had 15, and all of them were lined up side by side, and they would just come up, take a breath, and sink right back down with their faces into the current. They didn't even kick their tails. They were just moving themselves up and down in the water column. They would come up and we would feed them and they'd sink back down. And the storm probably raged here for probably 8 to 12 hours. Bailey's Key was underwater. The animals didn't move a muscle.
Wow.
They just rode it out. So
well, that's interesting, because we often get people who say, what do dolphins do in a hurricane? And I was like, well, I'm not out there in a hurricane, but you guys are actually out there because you have to take care of them and such. So, wow, very cool. I mean,
they just rode it out. And I think that's what probably, and I believe that's what happened in Freeport in the Bahamas when the Bahamas got hit. Those animals rode it out.
Yeah.
So they know how to handle a storm. Let's just put it that way. They know what they're doing. And like I said, surprising thing to me was the control of their bodies, that they were not exerting any effort to stay in that position.
Yeah.
They just, like I said, rose up to the surface to take a breath and then submerged and pretty much laid on the bottom.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah, it was pretty wild to watch.
Yeah, very cool. Well, when you have, you've had a number of different dolphins over the years, and you've seen different relationships. So, friends and mother calf, etc. When after a calf is weaned, do you see the calf, treating mom differently, or does mom become like any other dolphin? And it may be different for each of the dolphins, but
yeah, I was going to say that's very true. All these mothers are extremely individual, just like we are. Everybody's parenting style is not the same.
Yeah.
And it goes the same for the dolphins. Some of them hang on to their babies. Did you hear that?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know who did that. I don't know who said that, but someone out there is talking. So some of the animals will hang on to their calves longer than other moms. Very different parenting skills. And like I said, normal is to have a calf till they're 3. But by the time the calf is 3, the mother's ready to give birth. So she's gotten pregnant somewhere around the time when her calf was 2. What the calf doesn't understand when it's 3 is why its mother's chasing them away, because she's getting ready. She's still nursing the calf that she has, but it's not really for sustenance. It's for the social bonding. And then all of a sudden the mother says, no more for you. And the calf doesn't really understand why. Right. So that's kind of interesting to watch. And some calves really get upset, and some calves are like, okay, well, I wanted to be on my own anyway, Mom, so thanks. So it's really I really should write down every different person, every different dolphin I've seen do different things, because it's really interesting. And like I said, some mothers will then, if they are first time moms, or maybe if they're a little bit more of a submissive mom, a little bit more insecure, they'll hang on to their babies till they're 5. They won't have another calf, but every 4 or 5 years. So it's really interesting. But again, I don't think that there's any one trait that you can say, because they are so very individual.
Right. Makes sense. Is there Is there any particular behavior that pops out to I like to ask the behavior question, so I have to sneak one of mine in there. Is there any particular behavior that you've seen that sort of stands out to you that's like, huh, what's going on there?
Oh, so many. So where do I begin? Okay, so I love the males. Paya was the best dancer. Paya was a lover, not a fighter. When he wanted to breed with a female, the dances that he would put on were spectacular. Han and Hector weren't bad either, but Paya was the king.
What do you mean by
the
dancing?
Well, the body postures, the swimming, the
Okay.
exaggerated swim patterns that he would do. He would stand on his head and with his flukes right next to the female's face, not touching her, and just start blowing bubbles up her body. He would swim sideways with his head just out of the water, like in a serpentine style, and singing at the same time. Yeah, some of the male displays are just phenomenal. But like I said, I'm hoping that Ronnie and Richie will pick up on some of those in the not too distant future. But like I said, I've got some pictures of Paya just doing the funniest things. And then I had an episode of Mrs. Beasley and Gracie together, which I'll just leave right there, which was very interesting behavior. So, so they like each other a lot. They like each other in different ways. So yeah, male displays for females is really, really a very cool behavior. And I think sometimes when we're in the water with the dolphins and they can't figure out like what we're doing there because we're not very good swimmers and we can't hold our breath. And those looks on their faces are pretty special when they kind of look at us like, get out. You're not in you're not in your element. You should be on land.
Yeah.
People. Yeah. So.
Well, do you see, we had early on, we had a webinar on avoidance. You have friendships and you have dolphins that really like other dolphins and they have high association patterns, etc. And then there are dolphins that hardly ever are seen together or don't associate, and that it was identified as avoidance. Do you have any of the dolphins who might not necessarily really like somebody else and they avoid one another, or do they at least interact a little bit sometimes?
All of ours pretty much interact a little bit sometimes, but I have to say, Richie has a tough time with the girls because he's not very nice. He's not a good dancer. And so he tries to be like the tough guy. And with these girls, that really doesn't play out very well. So I'm trying to explain that to him, but he's 17, so he thinks he knows better. But so I would say if anybody is a little bit tough to get along with, it would be Rich. So we're working on that though. Like I said, there's still some interaction. He and Polly, he swims with Polly all of the time. And that's, what's that? What's going on there? Now I don't think she's quite been through puberty yet. I think she's kind of starting. She's 9 going on 10. So she should be, but she might be bloomer. But it seems to me that either she likes him a whole lot or he's patiently waiting for her to come of age, but they seem to like each other. So he's at least got somebody. And he and Ronnie and and French, he and Ronnie and he and French switch up. We take them open water runs. We mix them all up so they get some, alone time together, if that makes any sense.
Yeah. Well, we also
But
had go ahead.
I was going to say, I'll go just to wrap that section up. The females, it makes more sense that the females don't have a lot of avoidance as far as I've witnessed here, because the females, help each other with their babies and, babysitting and hunting and stuff like that. So if there was going to be any real cases of avoidance, I would assume it'd be, males being raided by females. So that's what I.
Yeah, it makes sense. We did have a question of, do any of the dolphins have boyfriends? I'm not sure. That might fit since we were talking about, some of the courtship dance that Paya would do, but do any of the females have a favorite male, I guess?
Well, they have in the past. Everyone loved Hector. I'll
Mhm.
tell you that. So a lot of the girls, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you a story about Hector with Carmela. Carmela was an older female that was very shy, and
Mhm.
she was originally collected in the wild, and she never really liked to gate into the backup area. She was basically, I think, afraid of the small space, versus the big lagoon. So we never really pushed her very hard on it because it seemed to be something that just caused a lot of undue, unnecessary stress. So we left Carmela in the main lagoon all the time. But when she wanted to breed and Hector gated in, she gated in right behind him like she'd been doing it all of her life.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then stood up and looked at us like, what? What's the big deal? I gated.
Yeah.
And I filmed it because she had never done that in her 24 years of being here.
Wow.
So
Wow.
yeah, so they do have boyfriends. They do have choices. Mrs. Beasley loved Paya,
Yeah.
and up until those guys were, gosh, it was only a couple years ago before those two were very old. And as you know, Kathleen, they've passed, but those two would often just be like loving on each other with no
Yeah.
real outcome.
Yeah.
No calf produced, but just being very, very social and very, very loving to one another. So yes, they do have. I do think they have favorites.
Well, I want to be cognizant of your time, so I have just two more questions, if that's okay. One is, I know that you feed them a variety of different fish, but you have a large natural area there. Do they hunt their own fish? Do they catch their own fish sometimes?
Yes. I can tell you several stories about that. I'll just keep it kind of short. But they love to hunt the little sprats. Kathleen, you've been here when we have a great run of the little green sprats.
Yep.
And they start off, all of these guys hunt and catch. Linka just ate a blue tang the other day. The first time I saw Paya catch a blue tang, I thought he had a blue plastic bag in his mouth because that was so many years ago. But no, it was a blue tang. I've had Mika throw a blue tang at me. I've had
I can just imagine that.
Yeah, take this, Teri. I don't need you or your stupid bucket of fish. I'll catch my own. And my favorite of all time was Tilly and the octopus.
Oh, I don't remember this one.
Oh yeah. So Carl had Tilly, and she pops up, and he started screaming. He started screaming for me to get over right away, and so I started running towards this platform, and Tilly pops up, and she's got some of the tentacles in her mouth, and the rest of it's wrapped around the top of her head. And she was chomping on it, and the octopus, I was trying to pull the tentacles out of her mouth to see if I could get the octopus free, and the octopus was obviously freaking out, so it was hanging on tighter. And Tilly had enough of us trying to pull her pet octopus off her breakfast of the day. I'm not sure what that was. But anyway, she went screaming across the pen and did a couple of side breaches. And I guess the octopus took his shot and jumped off her head, but he got away. So, yeah. So, yes, our animals do help themselves to a variety of fish that are live in the ocean. But of course, they love to see us coming with their buckets full too.
Very cool. And then the last question we had is, how do the dolphins get their names?
Oh, that's a great question. Okay, so there are so many different ways. A lot of times we vote on them, and people come up with really cute names and stuff. We kind of sort of started naming them after places in Honduras. Originally, there was Maya and Paya and Sedania and Ojo, and these are all places that are located either on Roatan, like Polly and Tilly. Polly was born 2 weeks prior to Tilly, so we named them Polly and Tilly. But then we have our sentimental things. My oldest daughter named Gracie. She liked the name Gracie when Gracie was brought in.
Nice.
when Tank was born, we had a lot of rough weather and stormy weather. And we said one time, Eldon and I were having coffee, and I said, you know, he's built like a tank. And so that's how he got his name.
Nice.
And then there's Eldon, who has named Mrs. Beasley, Carmela, and Richie after the Sopranos series. Absolutely can't explain why. I can't. I have no explanation for you there. Makes no sense at all to me. So we name them from, like I said, a variety of different ways, but more often than not, the trainers sit around and talk about the animals, the baby's personality, and what they've seen the baby do. Yeah, so that's how they get their names.
That's very cool. That's very cool. Well, thank you so much for your time, taking your time out and joining us for our webinar. And is there anything else you'd like to add before we say thank you and wish that I were there with you?
Yeah. Well, I guess I want to say come back soon and bring your peeps, because the dolphins need some attention. So we'll be looking forward to seeing you all as soon as possible.
I'm got a whole group of people coming down in October. If I could get there sooner, I would, but we'll be there in October.
Sounds great. We'll be waiting.
Yeah, sounds good.
Okay.
So, and Cal has our last little screen there that we can remind folks of how they can support DCP. Cal, I'll let you take that away.
Sure. Just a little thank you, of course, to Teri and for the dolphins who swam past and made an appearance. And thank you to everyone who joined live and anyone who's watching this recording. Of course, we have our reminders of how you can support DCP, but also how you can follow us on social media so that you can be sure that you don't miss out on any of our fun announcements. We thank you for your time and for your support. And one more big thank you to Teri for her time and the dolphins.
Thank you for inviting us. We'll see you soon.
Okay. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye.